Good afternoon, Dr. McKenzie.
Good afternoon, Dr. Dawson. Great to be with you.
Why is it important to have people from different races and ethnicities to participate in clinical trials?
Well, thanks for the question. First of all, I think we know that COVID-19 very disproportionately impacts diverse communities, especially the Black, Latinx, and Native American communities. And all of these communities are suffering higher rates of COVID-19, more severe COVID-19 disease, and hospitalizations are at a higher rate. And of course, they also suffer from increased mortality. So it's beyond the COVID-19 studies. We know that minorities have been historically really rather underrepresented in clinical studies. And given the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on those racial and ethnic groups, we really need to ensure that those who are at the highest risk have the opportunity to participate in our studies. And finally, of course, the broader reason is that we want all of our clinical trial populations to represent the population that we will see in clinical practice. And so that's why it's so important that we have as much diversity in our population as we can possibly get.
Can you explain a little more about how diverse representation impact health disparities and social determinants of health?
You know, when you look at racial and ethnic underrepresentation in clinical studies and the lack of that representative data, it makes it very difficult for health authorities who are reviewing these studies and regulators and also physicians who are prescribing to understand the extent to which a medicine can really help subsets of the population at large. And the other thing I would say is that, of course, taking part in a clinical study is an opportunity to take on the disease that you're suffering from, or in this case, to potentially be protected against COVID-19. So for all kinds of reasons, I think access to clinical trials for a much broader representation of society, just by its very nature, reduces health disparities, because to a large extent, people today are excluded from the health system.
When you look at it from a global perspective, I know that we're dealing today with this pandemic and COVID-19, but why is it important to have balanced representation in clinical trial and research from the healthcare perspective anyway?
We believe that just having access to clinical trials is to take part in a healthcare system, because having access to a clinical trial is a potential option as part of healthcare, but it's also contributing to the understanding we have of new medicines and vaccines. So unless we have a broad and diverse representation, then what we learn about these medicines and these vaccines is really necessarily limited. So we think that populations in our trials, and we're committed to doing this, should be much more representative of the population at large, and also the disease demographics.